The Hunger Games, the book series that kicked off the dystopian craze of the 2010s, the book series that continues to have a renaissance every few years, and personally, one of my favorite book series. So guys, if you see me looking down, that's because my computer is quite literally in front of my phone right now. I just like to explain my setup because I don't want people to be like, what is she looking at? Oh my god. I'm looking at my script. It's in front of my camera. It's on my computer. I'm sorry, I did not memorize all 20 pages of my script. I should have. It's finals week. There's a lot going on. But if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my script. I'm really sorry.
Are you coming to the tree?
The Hunger Games is deeply ingrained in my middle school memories. I read the first book, The Hunger Games, when I was 10 years old in 4th grade, which was in 2014. However, the first book originally came out in 2008, with the next two books in the trilogy, Catching Fire and Mockingjay, coming out in 2009 and 2010, respectively. The Hunger Games is written by Suzanne Collins. Collins has also recently written and released two prequels, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, 2020, and Sunrise on the Reaping, 2025. But what is The Hunger Games even about? Well, to quote the synopsis on the back of The Hunger Games, in the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to dead before, and survival for her is second nature. Without really meaning to, she becomes a contender. But if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. Obviously, within this dystopian society, there is a hierarchy. Capital at the very top, and the districts below. Collins comments on class consistently throughout the trilogy, which has led to many literary discussions on how the Hunger Games critiques class. The districts in Panem are also treated very poorly throughout the books, with constant comparisons drawn between the district's citizens and animals. Lastly, there is a huge contrast between the capital's urban thriving city and the districts and their rural, poverty-stricken areas. It is hard to solely analyze just one of these aspects of the Hunger Games without mentioning the others. So in today's video essay, I will mainly be attempting to answer the question of why the districts are treated like animals in the Hunger Games. By examining this aspect of the book, I will also be analyzing how classism and the rural impact the citizens of Panem. I'm Ella Blowin, and thank you for taking this journey of literary analysis with me. Today, I am channeling my inner Katniss Everdeen. In case you couldn't tell, I know my hair's not in a braid, but other than that, and I have tinsel in my hair, but other than that, I'm very Katniss. I have my Mockingjay pin right here, obviously. I have my quiver of arrows, and I have a bow right here. I just don't want to wear it on my shoulder because that would be uncomfortable. And then I'm also just wearing a little black fit underneath this brown jacket, which I know it's not quite her jacket that she has in the movies, but if you know, you know. If you know what I'm the look I'm aiming for, I think you guys get it. The real ones, the real Hunger Games fans get it. Katniss is my girl. I love her. I see a lot of myself in her. Hunger Games had a huge impact on me in middle school. My whole friend group was obsessed with Hunger Games in 5th grade. We all read the books Katniss for Halloween in 5th grade. I'll only be analyzing the first book in the Hunger Games because honestly, this video essay would be hours long. Analyze every book in the trilogy and the prequels, and also the script for this video is 20 pages long. but maybe there will be future video essays analyzing the rest of the books. The Hunger Games is extremely important still, but it sets up Panem and the dynamics in the society. I also always love to start at the beginning of a book series when analyzing. The Hunger Games has had a lasting impact in society, specifically the literary world. The Hunger Games has sold over 100 million copies globally, and it spent over 100 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. The trilogy has also been turned into a movie series with 4 films. Both of the prequels also have films, but the film version of Sunrise on the Reaping isn't coming out until November 2026. But you best believe I will be sat in that movie theater watching that movie. Like I stated previously, I will only be focusing on the first book in the trilogy. I will be mentioning the other books and using clips from the films. The trilogy follows Katniss Everdeen, who lives in District 12, the poorest district in Panem. It begins on Reaping Day, which is when the names of the tributes who will participate in the Hunger Games are drawn, to remind the districts of their lesser position in Panem, and to also serve as a reminder of the past failed rebellion that the districts attempted against the capital. One boy and one girl picked from each district lottery system. Their names are put in a bowl and fished out. These tributes are then shipped off to the capital where they prepare for the games. The games themselves are held in an arena, which changes every year. Once the tributes are in the arena, they must fight to the death until only one tribute remains. The tribute is then crowned as the victor of the games, and the victor's district that they come from gets showered with money and attention from the capital. I know most people know the basic plot of the Hunger Games. I also think it's important to explain the plot and the concept of the games before analyzing the book. I'm also going to explain it again later. But back to the book. During the reaping, Katniss's younger sister Prim's name gets drawn.
Primrose Everdeen.
Katniss, in a desperate attempt to protect her younger sister, volunteers to take her place in the 74th Hunger Games.
I volunteer as tribute!
Male tribute from District 12 is Peeta Mellark, who is a schoolmate of Katniss's. Don't worry, I will be deep diving into Peeta and Katniss's whole relationship later. The book follows Peeta and Katniss as they journey to the capital and get to witness the urbanization, the extreme class divide present in their society in person, before they are then thrown into the arena. When reading the book, it's hard to ignore how Katniss and Peeta are treated like animals throughout their experience in the capital and in the arena. I especially began to notice how the citizens in the districts were treated like animals when I did my yearly reread of the series. I then started to analyze the Hunger Games through an animal theory lens. But what is animal theory? Jess Crawley defines animal theory in her article Applying Animal Theory to Gale's National Geographic Virtual Library. Crawley states that animal theory is a field of study that investigates the animal-human relationship and the ethical consideration we should apply to said relationship. I will be utilizing animal theory throughout this video essay, specifically when analyzing how the animals and the tributes are compared throughout the book. I'll also be mentioning anthropocentrism as well. Anthropocentrism, as defined by L. Gornick and M. P. Nelson, and anthropocentrism, an overview, is anthropocentrism literally means human-centered, but in its most relevant philosophical form, it is the ethical belief that humans alone possess intrinsic value. Anthropocentrism plays a huge role in animal theory because animal theory typically critiques how humans interact with non-humans, which we humans typically refer to as animals. The breed of animal theory that I will be utilizing in this video essay is analyzing how humans degrade other humans by viewing them as animals. That means I'll be breaking down the language that characters use when discussing other characters, along with looking at interactions between characters. I will also be employing other critical theory lenses throughout this video essay, specifically eco-criticism. Lisa Long defines eco-criticism in the textbook Critical Worlds, A Targeted Introduction to Literary Analysis as eco-criticism is a critical approach to literature and culture that focuses on the relationship between human beings and the natural world. It emerged in the 1990s as a response to growing concerns about environmental degradation and the impact of human activity on the planet. I will be focusing on the relationship between the characters in the Hunger Games and the rural landscape in the book. Eco-criticism typically goes hand in hand with animal theory as they both focus on the environment and the natural world. I will also be examining classism throughout the Hunger Games as well, which in my opinion has a direct relation with eco-criticism and animal theory. It's There's a clear divide present in the Hunger Games. But what do I mean when I say I'm examining the classism in the Hunger Games? Well, to quote Merriam-Webster, classism is a belief that a person's social or economic position in society determines their value in that society. Also, behavior that reflects this belief, prejudice, or discrimination based on class. And they also say the systemic oppression of the lower and middle class to the advantage of the
upper class.
A person's class is determined by their financial standing in a society. Those who are upper class are typically those with the most money. These upper class people are also typically extremely powerful and also sometimes referred to as the 1%, as they only make up 1% of a total society. In the Hunger Games, the citizens in the capital are upper class, while the citizens in the districts range from middle to lower class. As Danya Suleiman states in their thesis, the effect of social status and social class in a world that aims to achieve peace. Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games series. The first novel in the Hunger Games creates an awareness about the difference of status between the citizens of the lower class people and the upper class people. It shows how the people from the capital are treated very differently from the people that live in the districts. In the novels, capitalism is represented in many ways. The capitalist society is made of only two classes. As Suleiman states, differences between the capital citizens and the district citizens is set up immediately in the Hunger Games. From the start of the book, it is clear through Katniss's narration that the citizens of District 12, the district that Katniss lives in, all fall into lower and middle class. On page 4 of the Hunger Games, Katniss describes where she lives in District 12. Our part of District 12, nicknamed the Seam, is usually crawling with coal miners heading out to the morning shift at this hour. Men and women with hunched shoulders, swollen knuckles, many who have long since stopped trying to scrub the coal dust out of their broken nails, the lines of their sunken faces. The Seam in District 12 is where the poorest people in the district live, such as Katniss and her family. All the districts in Panem have a sole export, and District 12's is coal. The districts don't get to keep their exports. All of them go directly to the capital, which just increases the capital's wealth. Most of the citizens who live in the Seam are coal miners, who have to work hard every day in order to afford to feed their family. And then there are those who live in the town, typically referred to as merchants, who are more middle class, part of the small merchant class that caters to officials. The capital keeps the districts in this state of low income/poverty as a form of control, something Brianna Burke covers in the article Reaping Environmental Justice Through Compassion in the Hunger Games. Brianna discusses how the capital keeps the districts in a state of reliance. The capital controls the totality of all material production. District 1 provides luxury items, District 7 provides lumber, District 11 grows food, District 12 mines coal. The districts closer to the capital have what we might call favorable trade agreements. They supply luxury goods and services to the capital residents. Created wealth disparity between the capital and the districts is also mirrored between the wealthier districts and the poor ones. Along with making the districts reliant upon the capital for resources, the capital also sets up a class system between the districts. But back to the actual text of the book. Katniss wakes up early on Reaping Day to go off and hunt in the woods with her friend Gale.
It's Reaping Day. The place is crawling with peacekeepers.
I was gonna sell it to some peacekeepers.
Hunting is illegal in District 12 and all the other districts. As Katniss says, Gale and I agree that if we have to choose between dying of hunger and a bullet in the head, the bullet would be much quicker. Katniss's father died in a mining accident when Katniss was 11 years old. His death caused Katniss's mother to spiral into a catatonic state and Katniss to have to provide for her family, specifically her younger sister Prim. Luckily, Katniss's father had been a hunter and had taught Katniss about hunting, specifically how to use a bow and arrow. Katniss uses these skills to keep her family from dying from starvation. Starvation seems to be an issue in all the districts in Panem, something the capital also preys upon. This gets revealed to the reader when Katniss explains the reaping system for the Hunger Games. The reaping system is unfair, with the poor getting the worst of it. You become eligible for the reaping the day you turn 12. That year, your name was entered once. That's true for every citizen in all 12 districts in the entire country of Panem. But here's the catch. Say you were poor and starving as we were. You can opt to add your name more times in exchange for tesserae. Each tesserae is worth a meager year's supply of grain and oil for one person. You may do this for each of your family members as well. This is another way that the capital reinforces the class dynamics in the districts, with those who may have a little bit more money having their names entered less than those who are more impoverished. Katniss compares herself to one of her classmates and friend, Madge, who is the mayor of District 12's daughter. Madge, because she is the mayor's daughter, is part of the middle class of District 12, which means it is highly unlikely that she had to take out tesserae for her family, something Katniss points out. You can see why someone like Madge, who has never been at risk of needing a tesserae, can set him off. The chance of her name being drawn is very slim compared to those of us who live in the seam. The other thing is that the capital basically punishes those who have to take out tesserae by making the entries add up every year. So now, at the age of 16, my name will be in the reaping 20 times.
How many times did your name in today?
42. Guess the odds aren't exactly in my favor.
Katniss took out tesserae as another way to take care of her family, along with her continuing to hunt. But by taking care of her family, Katniss is directly putting her life on the line. To quote Burke again, in other words, Katniss wagered her life to prevent her family from starving. Katniss also notes that those who are of a higher economic class like Madge, the mayor's daughter, do not have to sign up for tesserae. This is yet again another form of control from the capital. They are forcing the district citizens to risk their lives in order to simply not die from starvation. The tesserae are just another tool to cause misery in our district, a way to plant hatred between the starving workers of the seam and those who can generally count on supper and thereby ensure we will never trust one another. Katniss, who is fiercely protective over her little sister Prim, doesn't allow Prim to take out any tesserae, trying everything in her power to protect her from the horrors of the Hunger Games. Classism persists throughout the rest of the book, and I will be continuing to mention the class dynamics as I continue to analyze other aspects of the book. As Suleiman states in the thesis, The Effect of Social Status and Social Class in a World That Aims to Achieve Peace, Suzanne Collins, The Hunger Games series. The districts endured a great time of constant oppression and humiliation by the capital throughout the occurrence of the Hunger Games. These games were mainly created to spread fear amongst the citizens of the districts and to remind them that, no matter how hard they tried, they could never destroy the capital. Citizens of the capital could not be chosen to compete in the Hunger Games, even though they personally affected the citizens of the districts. Capital citizens would only watch for entertainment. The capital uses the Hunger Games as a tactic to keep the citizens of the districts in line and prevent them from rebelling. As Katniss says, taking the kids from our districts, forcing them to kill one another while we watch, this is the capital's way of reminding us how totally we are at their mercy. The capital broadcasts the games as a way of reinforcing the power dynamics even further, and a reminder of the failed rebellion that the districts had attempted against the capital. The result was Panem, a shining capital ringed by 13 districts, which brought peace and prosperity to its citizens. Then came the dark days, the uprising of the districts against the capital. 12 were defeated and the 13th obliterated. The Treaty of Treason gave us the new laws to guarantee peace, and as our yearly reminder that the dark days must never be repeated, it gave us the Hunger Games. Katniss goes on to outline the rules of the Hunger Games, which I'm going to include because I do think it is helpful. The rules of the Hunger Games are simple. In punishment for the uprising, each of the 12 districts must provide one girl and one boy, called tributes, to participate. The 24 tributes will be imprisoned in a vast outdoor arena that could hold anything from a burning desert to a frozen wasteland. Over a period of several weeks, the competitors must fight to the death. The last tribute standing wins. The citizens in the districts are forced to watch as the children, or sometimes their own children, from their district fight to the death. and is yet another example of the Capitol exerting their power over the districts. The Capitol also forces the districts to treat the games like a celebration, something Katniss points out. To make it humiliating as well as torturous, the Capitol requires us to treat the Hunger Games as a festivity, a sporting event pitting every district against the others. The last tribute alive receives a life of ease back home, and their district will be showered with prizes. Again, the Capitol encourages competition between the districts, pitting them against each other in the games, in an attempt to stop the districts from working together to rebel. The other horrific aspect of the games is that it's children who are forced to enter the games. Any citizen of the districts ages 12 through 18 must enter their name to potentially be reaped for the games. Children are being brutally murdered on television, and everyone in the districts are forced to watch. Amber Simmons explores how children are forced to be violent in the article Class on Fire, using the Hunger Games trilogy to encourage social action. Simmons states, forcing children into violent situations that requires them to kill or be killed is the major theme of the Hunger Games series. As punishment for the district's rebellion to the Capitol's rule, the Capitol created the Hunger Games to remind the districts of its power. Innocent preteens and teenagers, who are literally children, are stripped of their autonomy and forced into violence. They have no choice, no say in what happens to them. The children who are forced to participate in the games must either kill fellow children as a form of self-defense or accept their death. One of the worst parts is when a 12-year-old's name is reaped, which is what happens in the Hunger Games. As I have mentioned in previous sections, Katniss is fiercely protective over her little sister, Primrose Everdeen. So when Prim's name gets reaped, Katniss immediately feels the urge to protect her, specifically because Prim's shirt has come untucked from her skirt, making it appear that she has a tail, something Katniss commented on earlier. "Tuck your tail in, little duck," I say, smoothing the blouse back into place. Prim giggles and gives me a small quack. "Quack yourself," I say with a little laugh.
Oh, look at you. You look beautiful. But you better tuck in that tail, little duck.
When Katniss spots that Prim's blouse has come undone again, she realizes what she must do. Tucked blouse forming a duck tail. That brings me back to myself. Katniss volunteers to take her sister's spot in the games, saving her sister yet again.
Prim! I volunteer! I volunteer as tribute!
I think it is extremely important that Katniss compares her sister to an animal, but she does it in a humanizing way. Comparing Prim to a little duck is what brings Katniss back to reality. Katniss compares the people around her to animals multiple times throughout the book, but she never does it in a dehumanizing way. Katniss has a deep appreciation for animals and the natural world, aka the rural, but that's going to come up later. After Katniss volunteers for her sister, she goes up on the stage as Effie Trinket, a Capitol citizen, pulls the name of the other tribute.
And now, for the boys.
Their tribute from District 12 is Peeta Mellark.
Peeta Mellark.
One of Katniss's schoolmates, someone to whom she owes a debt. Peeta is a son of the bakers in District 12, so he is one of the merchant kids. Katniss owes Peeta a debt because he gave her bread. She was starving. Peeta was supposed to give the bread to the pig that the bakers have in their backyard. "Feed it to the pig, you stupid creature. Why not? No one decent will buy burned bread." But instead, he throws the bread to Katniss, who had collapsed from cold and starvation under a tree in the baker's backyard. Katniss's father had just recently died, and her family had nothing to eat. Peeta throwing the bread to Katniss also set up a chain reaction of her remembering all the things that her father had taught her about hunting and gathering. Katniss immediately feels a sense of guilt as Peeta joins her on stage and they are announced as the tributes of District 12. The two tributes are then brought into the Justice Building, which is essentially the town hall / official building of District 12. Katniss and Peeta are both allowed to say goodbye to friends and family. I know I'm kind of skimming over this, but if I were to deep dive into every single detail in the book, we would be here for far too long. Katniss's friend, Madge, comes to say goodbye and gives her a pin. That aspect of Madge giving it to her is erased from the movie, and I think that is a crime. Madge should have been in the movies. Still mad that she wasn't. She's one of my favorites. I said it.
What's this? That's a mockingjay.
She holds out the circular gold pin that was on her dress earlier. I hadn't paid much attention to it before, but now I see it's a small bird in flight. This pin becomes extremely important later on in the book. The other two books in the trilogy. And one of the prequels. Finally, Gale comes to say goodbye to Katniss, and they discuss her potentially winning the games. Katniss, it's just hunting. You're the best hunter I know, says Gale. It's not just hunting, they're armed. They think, I say. So do you. And you've had more practice. Real practice, he says. You know how to kill. Not people, I say. How different can it be, really? Says Gale grimly. The awful thing is that if I can forget they're people, it will be no different at all.
Know how to hunt.
Animals.
It's no different, Katniss.
Just this one simple conversation feels so much about both Katniss and Gale. Specifically Gale. It's foreshadowing. Gale's character. If you guys know, you know. It's literally foreshadowing. They are talking about killing humans versus killing animals. I know I stated earlier that Katniss really appreciates and cares about animals and the rural world. She's also a hunter. Gale argues that humans and animals aren't that different, and for once, I agree with Gale. Because from an animal theory lens, saying that killing a human is worse than killing an animal is placing humans on a non-animal pedestal. At the end of the day, we are all animals. I would argue that it is far worse to kill an innocent animal than a human. Not that I think I could do either of those things. However, the circumstances in the Hunger Games are extremely different than the real world that I live in. Katniss kills animals as a way of feeding herself and her family, and not without reason. Quote Brianna Burke again, and while it is true that Katniss hunts, an issue on which the environmental movement is split, she does so because she must, and never without respect. Katniss, along with Peeta and Haymitch and Effie, two other significant characters who unfortunately I will not be deep diving into in this video, sorry guys, board the train that will take them to the capital. While on board the train, Effie comments on how Peeta and Katniss eat. At least you two have decent manners, says Effie, as we're finishing the main course. The pair last year ate everything with their hands, like a couple of savages. It completely upset my digestion. This comment highlights exactly how the citizens of the capital view the citizens of the districts. Sullivan points out how the capital citizens view the district citizens as less intelligent in their thesis. The capital citizens never realized citizens of the districts were as intelligent as they are, and capable of feeling, due to the fact that they live such drastically different lives. That lack of understanding that allowed the capital citizens to dismiss the suffering within the Hunger Games, and perceive it as entertainment. They see them via the reality TV and forget the fact that the tributes are real people. They think of them as lower than humans, as animals. It's further illustrated throughout Katniss and Peeta's time in the capital. Katniss and Peeta go to the capital as part of the spectacle of the games. They are accompanied by Haymitch Abernathy, their mentor, who was the previous victor of the Hunger Games, and an alcoholic. I don't want to say anything else about him because I don't want to spoil Sunrise on the Reaping, but if you want to know more about Haymitch Abernathy, read Sunrise on the Reaping, and then maybe one day I will make a video essay on it. And Effie Trinket, who is their escort sent from the capital. When they all arrive in the capital, both Katniss and Peeta are immediately taken to their prep teams, whose job it is to make sure they look appealing to the citizens of the capital. The whole scene is extremely revealing to the mindset that the capital has on the citizens of the districts. My legs, arms, torso, underarms, and parts of my eyebrows have been stripped of the stuff, leaving me like a plucked bird, ready for roasting. Katniss compares herself to a bird who is being prepared for a meal. Quite a dark and sad comparison. Something Burke points out as well. Concretizing the connection between the tributes and food, Collins writes that afterward Katniss feels like a plucked bird, ready for roasting. The tributes at the games are treated like animals in a zoo by the citizens of the capital. That's a targeted line talking about the prequel Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes. Go read it. Read The Hunger Games. It's 2025. If you live in the United States of America, you're in fascism. It is happening. You need to wake up, and you should be reading books like this. It has real world connections and references to our world. Thank you, Suzanne Collins, because for making people wake up and realize what's around them. They are viewed as dangerous, uncivilized creatures. This is demonstrated in another scene with Effie Trinket. How you've both successfully struggled to overcome the barbarism of your district. Barbarism? That's ironic coming from a woman helping to prepare us for slaughter. What's she basing our success on? Our table manners? The capital citizens dehumanize the citizens of the districts as a way of justifying their slaughter. They parade them around in insane costumes, dressing them up for their own slaughter.
There they are. This year's tributes.
Oh, the most exciting part.
It just gives you goosebumps.
And don't you
It's all a game to the citizens of the capital, and they consume the tributes, viewing them almost as characters and not real humans. During their preparation time in the capital, Katniss and Peeta get to see firsthand how different the lives of the capital citizens are in comparison to those of the districts. And I really want to deep dive into all the little details, but I do not have the time nor the energy. Sadly. I'm so sorry, guys. Finally, we reach the games. This is brought via hovercraft to her lunchroom. The lunchrooms are located in the catacombs underneath the arena. Katniss quite literally describes the lunchroom as, in the districts, it's referred to as the stockyard, the place animals go before slaughter. Again, Katniss feels like an animal, first being made over to look appealing to the audience, consuming the games, then being placed into a literal slaughterhouse, the arena, where the audience will literally consume the tribute's deaths. To quote Burke again, this is why Katniss enters the arena, not as a human being, but as a piece of meat prepared for consumption by those too self-involved to see her as anything other than entertainment. I know I'm skimming over a lot of important characters and plot points. Sorry, Cinna. Sorry, Caesar Flickerman. But maybe I will cover those in a different video essay. The tributes for the Hunger Games are constantly dehumanized and compared to animals, in a way to make the horrors of the games more digestible to the audience witnessing the horrors. Burke puts it best. Dehumanizing the poor children of the districts is one of the ways the capital justifies devouring the commodified tributes. As I mentioned previously, I'm going to be discussing the rural in the Hunger Games. What does the word rural mean? Well, according to my friends at Merriam-Webster, rural means of or relating to the country, country people, or life, or agriculture. Ality plays a huge part in the Hunger Games, especially when comparing and contrasting the districts and the capital. The capital, in comparison to the districts, is extremely urban and modern, something both Katniss and Peeta point out during their time. The capital, the ruling city of Panem, the cameras haven't lied about its grandeur. If anything, they have not quite captured the magnificence of the glistening buildings and a rainbow of hues that tower into the air, the shiny cars that roll down the wide paved streets, the oddly dressed people with bizarre hair and painted faces who have never missed a meal.
It's huge. That's incredible.
The capital is an urban, thriving city. However, there is also something fake about it. All the colors seem artificial. The pinks too deep, the greens too bright, yellows painful to the eyes, like the flat, round discs of hard candy we can never afford to buy at the tiny sweet shop in District 12.
So now that you've
This description of the capital can easily be compared to Katniss's description of District 12. We settle back in a nook in the rocks. From this place, we are invisible, but we have a clear view of the valley, which is teeming with summer life. Greens to gather, roots to dig, fish iridescent in the sunlight. The day is glorious, with the blue sky and soft breeze. Obviously, Katniss has a deep love for District 12, because it is her home. She has her critiques of her district. Through her descriptions of District 12, it all feels authentic and real. In The Hunger Games, Catching Fire in Rural Schools by Amy Price Asno. Asno explores how the rural plays into The Hunger Games. Asno points out how important the rural landscape is to Katniss. Katniss knows this rural life world. She grew up in a tight-knit community with intimate knowledge of the natural world and a unique understanding of expectations. Her sense of place is her greatest strength. Katniss is deeply connected to the rural landscape in District 12, not only because she grew up there, but because the rural nature kept her and her family alive. Everything in the capital is extremely modernized, a direct contrast to the almost antiquated districts. Electricity in District 12 comes and goes. Usually we only have it a few hours a day. Often the evenings are spent in candlelight. The only time you can count on it is when they're airing the games, or some important government message on television that it's mandatory to watch. Here there would be no shortage, ever. Again, the classism in Panem is on full display here. The abundance that the capital has in comparison to the lack of resources in the districts is shocking, specifically in relation to the amount of gadgets and technology the capital has at their disposal, where in the districts they can't always count on electricity. The capital keeps the districts in this state of poverty as a form of control. The capital bans the citizens of the districts from providing for themselves. Hunting and gathering is illegal, which forces the citizens of the districts to rely upon the capital and their modern urban technology, as opposed to the rural, natural world around them. Brianna Burke discusses how the capital controls the district citizens. The food provided by nature is forbidden to the citizens of the districts, and after successive generations of containment, they no longer know how to hunt or forage. The capital has purposely created a system that prevents its people from being able to provide for themselves. However, Katniss ignores the laws and uses the natural resources in her district to survive, which ultimately benefits her in the Hunger Games. When discussing their skills that may come in handy during the games with their mentor Haymitch, Peeta mentions how Katniss is a hunter. You'll be living up in some tree, eating raw squirrels, and picking off people with arrows. Katniss's knowledge of the natural world and how to survive off the rural landscape help her have access to food in the arena. During the training the tributes do prior to entering the arena, Katniss notices how underfed some of the other tributes are, even though many of the tributes have never been fed properly. You can see it in their bones, their skin, the hollow look in their eyes. I may be smaller naturally, but overall my family's resourcefulness has given me an edge in that area. The meat and plants from the woods, combined with the exertion it took to get them, have given me a healthier body than most of those I see around me. Most of the tributes did not have access to food due to the capital keeping the districts impoverished, and most of them do not possess the same knowledge about the natural world as Katniss. However, the tributes from the wealthier districts that are favored more by the capital, districts 1, 2, and 4, had more access to food and other resources, although they still grew up impoverished. The exceptions are the kids from the wealthier districts, the volunteers, the ones who have been fed and trained throughout their lives for this moment. The tributes from 1, 2, and 4 traditionally have this look about them. These tributes from the wealthier districts are referred to as careers. The career tributes, however, also lack the knowledge about the rural world. Once Katniss has finally entered the arena and the games have begun, Katniss's knowledge of the rural world benefits her greatly. The arena for the 74th Games is a forest, a place Katniss feels extremely at home in. We're on a flat, open stretch of ground, a plain of hard-packed dirt. Behind the tributes across from me, I can see nothing, indicating either a steep downward slope or even a cliff. To my right lies a lake. To my left and back, sparse, piney woods. Katniss is able to thrive in this arena because the woods are reminiscent back home in her district. But for the other tributes who don't possess the knowledge about the rural world, their only hope for food and supplies lies in what is contained in the cornucopia. Burke explains the cornucopia in her article. In the middle of the arena sits the cornucopia, stuffed with the goods, food, water, and weapons the tributes will need to survive if they have no hunting and survival skills of their own. In order to reach these commodities, however, the tributes must risk fighting each other and the couriers, the children of the wealthy districts trained in battle techniques from birth. Replicating the conditions of Katniss's life, each tribute must choose, in the opening moments of the games, between dying in battle for access to the food in the cornucopia, and thus survival, or starvation. No choice at all. Katniss grabs a backpack that was close to her metal plate that she stands on at the beginning of the games. However, she doesn't attempt to go further into the cornucopia. For those who do attempt to grab life-saving supplies from the cornucopia, they are directly putting their lives at risk. There is always a bloodbath at the cornucopia, with the courier tributes typically taking out a lot of the weaker tributes who attempt to get supplies. The couriers then take control of the supplies in the cornucopia, not allowing other tributes access to supplies that they may need. However, the couriers also need the supplies, especially because they've never been underfed and need access to the food in the cornucopia to survive. But back to Katniss in the rural. After grabbing the backpack, Katniss runs into the woods, getting away from the other tributes. The woods begin to evolve, and the pines are intermixed with a variety of trees. Some I recognize, some completely foreign to me. Katniss feels extremely at home and comfortable in the woods, her knowledge on the rural and natural world helping her, especially her hunting skills, which she uses to keep herself fed and alive. I want sponsors to see I can hunt, that I'm a good bet because I won't be lured into traps as easily as the others will by hunger. The citizens in the capital and the districts can sponsor tributes, along with betting on who they think will win or lose. The sponsors can send the tributes things they desperately need, like medicine, food, water. Tributes win sponsors by proving themselves in the games. Katniss hopes her hunting and knowledge of the rural will help her win sponsors. Katniss's knowledge of plants and animals keeps her alive in the arena, specifically when she comes across a bunch of poisonous berries. I spot a cluster of berry bushes and hurry to strip the fruit to suck the sweet juices from the skin, but just as I'm holding them to my lips, I get a hard look at them. What I thought were blueberries have a slightly different shape, and when I break one open, the insides are blood red. I don't recognize these berries. Perhaps they are edible, but I'm guessing this is some evil trick on the part of the game makers. These berries come into play in a big way at the end of the book. If you know, you know. Katniss's father taught her about edible plants, but he also warned her to eat only a plant if she was 100% sure that it was edible. Katniss continues to journey through the woods, desperate for water, which she does eventually find. However, just as she finds water, the game makers start a fire in the woods, which Katniss is able to get away from, but not without getting burned. Katniss's mother is a healer, having a great knowledge of plants and herbs that can heal people. Katniss's maternal grandparents ran the apothecary shop in District 12, so her mother gained her skills from growing up there. Both of Katniss's parents raised her to have an immense knowledge about the natural world and all the resources found in rural areas. As Burke says, Katniss's mother is a healer, using ecological knowledge and plants to treat the injured. Katniss is able to utilize the knowledge that she has learned over the years from watching her mother heal people from burns, to somewhat heal her own burns. Again, Katniss's knowledge on the resources found in the rural are her saving grace. Although Katniss does ultimately need medicine from a sponsor to truly make her burns better. However, just as Katniss is readjusting after getting severely burned, the couriers come across her, just like a pack of wild dogs. Katniss compares the couriers to dogs multiple times throughout the book, sort of foreshadowing. Katniss is able to run ahead of them, and she climbs up a tree, leaving behind the couriers who can't climb as high as her due to their height and weight. Gale always says I remind him of a squirrel, the way I can scurry up even the shortest limbs. The careers give up on trying to climb up the tree and spend the night on the ground, awaiting Katniss, because she has to come down eventually. But as Katniss is settling into the tree for the night, she spots another tribute in a tree near her. Psst. Psst. The tribute is 12-year-old Rue from District 12, who Katniss can't help but compare to her sister Prim. Rue points at something in the tree above Katniss. Then I know it's a wasp's nest. This isn't a normal wasp's nest, but a mutation created by the Capitol. I'm going to dive into the mutations in a following section, but essentially Katniss cuts down the nest and sends the tracker jackers down onto the careers. She kills 2 of them and sends the rest of them running towards the lake that's near the cornucopia. Katniss gets stung by the tracker jackers in the process, and she passes out due to the venom that gets transferred through the stings. When Katniss comes to, she knows that she has to heal her stings, but she isn't sure how. My mother knew a treatment for them. Some type of leaf could draw out the poison, but she seldom had cause to use it, and I don't even remember its name, let alone appearance. Katniss runs into Rue again, and she offers to be her ally, essentially meaning that they'll work together to survive. Rue offers to help heal Katniss's stings. She digs into the pack she carries and pulls out a handful of leaves. I'm almost certain they're the ones my mother uses. Where'd you find those? Just around. We all carry them when we work in the orchards. District 11's industry is agriculture, which means Rue also has a vast knowledge on the rural landscape. It is extremely noticeable that the tributes who survive are those who know how to utilize the rural world around them. Burke also points out, and indeed the tributes who make it to the end of the games are those who have knowledge. Rue and Thresh from agricultural district. Katniss, who can hunt for herself and Peeta. The only other tribute who does not know how to find or hunt for food is Cato, the strongest and most brutal career, surviving only because he hoards the supplies from the cornucopia. Katniss and Rue discuss how they can potentially take out the careers so that they might have a chance to win. Together, they come up with a plan to take out all the supplies at the cornucopia. Without the food and supplies at the cornucopia, the careers likely won't survive. That the careers have been better fed growing up is actually to their disadvantage because they don't know how to be hungry. Katniss and Rue split up, with Rue starting fires, a distraction to bring the careers from the cornucopia to the woods, while Katniss goes to the cornucopia to destroy the stash of supplies. However, the careers have recruited another tribute, the boy from District 3, whose industry is creating explosives, automobiles, and televisions. The boy from District 3 has reactivated the landmines that lay underneath the ground where the tributes first entered the arena, essentially booby-trapping the supplies in the cornucopia, ensuring that the others can't steal from the careers without being blown up. But Katniss uses the landmines to blow up all the supplies, weakening the careers. The career's stores eliminated, she might actually stand a chance, just like the rest of us. However, while Katniss was gone, Rue gets murdered by the boy from District 1. Katniss gets to her in time to kill the boy, and Rue dies in her arms. Katniss can't bring herself to hate the boy who brutally murdered her ally. To hate the boy from District 1, who also seems so vulnerable in death, seems inadequate. It's the Capitol I hate for doing this to all of us. Katniss is extremely angry at the Capitol for sending the tributes to their death, and she feels the urge to do something, to make the Capitol feel bad for their actions. A few steps into the woods grows a bank of wildflowers. Perhaps they are really weeds of some sort, but they have blossoms in beautiful shades of violet and yellow and white. I gather an armful and come back to Rue's side. Only one stem at a time, I decorate her body in the flowers, covering the ugly wound, wreathing her face, weaving her hair with bright colors. She covers Rue in flowers, using the natural resources in the arena to show the Capitol the horrors they commit, killing a 12-year-old. After mourning Rue, Katniss hears the game makers make an announcement. There's been a rule change in the games. A rule change? That in itself is mind-bending, since we don't really have any rules to speak of, except don't step off your circle for 60 seconds and the unspoken rule about not eating one another. Under the new rule, both tributes from the same district will be declared winners if they are the last two alive. Katniss realizes that both her and Peeta can now win the games, and she heads off in search of him. Earlier in the book, when the tributes are interviewed prior to being shipped off to the arena, Peeta confessed to having a crush on Katniss. Well, there is this one girl. I've had a crush on her ever since I can remember, but I'm pretty sure she didn't know I was alive until the reaping. You win, you go home. She can't turn you down then, eh? Says Caesar encouragingly. I don't think it's gonna work out. Winning won't help my case, says Peeta. Why ever not? Says Caesar, mystified. Peeta blushes beet red and stammers out, because she came here with me.
Well, there is this one girl that I've had a crush on forever. But I don't think she actually recognized me until the reaping.
You go out there and you win this thing. And when you get home, she'll have to go out with you.
I don't think winning's gonna help me at all. Because she came here with me.
This is all kind of an act put on by Peeta and Haymitch in order to win the favor of the viewers of the games. Katniss and Peeta are portrayed as tragic, star-crossed lovers who the audience can't help but want to root for, because who doesn't love a good love story? Peeta is playing the games, convincing the audience that he is madly in love with Katniss, which we all know he actually is. Capital citizens grow obsessed with this romance, which causes the rule change. For two tributes to have a shot at winning, our romance must have been so popular with the audience that condemning it would jeopardize the success of the games. Cato attacked Peeta after Katniss sent the Trackerjackers onto the careers. But Peeta was able to escape and run away, however he got severely injured. It is revealed earlier that Peeta was in charge of frosting the cakes at the bakery in District 12. And he also loves to paint, and that translates to a skill in camouflage.
Camo, camouflage, camo, camo, camouflage, painting camo, camouflage.
So after escaping Cato, Peeta camouflages himself near a stream in the woods. He uses mud and plants to blend into the natural landscape. Most of what I judge to be his body is actually under a layer of mud and plants. His face and arms are so artfully disguised as to be invisible. Yet again, another example of a tribute using the rural to survive. Peeta is severely injured by Cato. His leg got badly cut by Cato's sword. Katniss attempts to heal Peeta's injury. Within minutes of pressing the handful of chewed up green stuff into the wound, pus begins running down the side of his leg. However, she slowly realizes that she can't heal him with natural medicine. My chewed up leaves and ointments won't make a dent in it. We'll need stronger anti-infection drugs from the capital. Throughout the book, Collins makes it clear that nature and the rural are extremely important and should be used to survive. However, there are moments when other forms of medicine are needed. The capital, however, is truly responsible for Peeta's injury, because without creating the games, he wouldn't have gotten hurt. So therefore, they should step in and give him the medicine that he needs. Katniss and Peeta find a cave that becomes their refuge for a few days during the games. Again, using the natural resources to survive. Katniss keeps both her and Peeta alive using her knowledge on edible plants and her hunting skills. But Peeta's leg continues to get worse until the game makers announce they are holding a feast, which supplies that all the remaining tributes need to survive will be supplied to them. Katniss goes, but gets attacked by the girl from District 2, Clove. But then Thresh, the boy from District 11, steps in when he hears Clove, the girl from 2, mentioning Rue and how she got murdered. Thresh is extremely strong, and he uses a rock to kill Clove. Thresh brings the rock down hard against Clove's temple. Again, another tribute using natural resources as opposed to the weapons created by the capital. Katniss returns to Peeta and gives him the medicine supplied at the feast. Eventually, they both recover, with Katniss having received injuries during the feast. And as they recover, they continue their star-crossed lovers act, which slowly turns into not really an act. and they both start to get to know each other better. Peeta revealed that despite his family being a part of the middle class in District 12, his family is still impoverished. Too expensive for my family to eat, unless it's gone very stale. Of course, practically everything we eat is stale. Katniss had never considered what it would be like for the merchant class in 12. She compares the food she supplies for her family to Peeta's food. One thing about us, since I bring our food home on a daily basis, most of it is so fresh you have to make sure it isn't going to make a run for it. Anna slowly starts to realize that no one in any of the districts is thriving. They are all suffering in their own ways. Katniss and Peeta leave the cave once they've both somewhat recovered from their injuries, and they start to hunt for food. But Katniss slowly realizes that Peeta has no clue how to hunt, and his footsteps are far too heavy and loud, and he scares away any potential game. I have to remind myself that he's still not used to the woods, that it's the scary, forbidden place beyond the fences of District 12. Peeta hasn't had the experience of having to provide food for his family in the same way that Katniss has. He doesn't have the same knowledge of the rural that she does, which is further illustrated when they split up and Peeta gathers edible plants for them to eat. So why don't you go on? Show me some plants to gather, and that way we'll both be useful. They split up, and Katniss is able to actually hunt. Soon have 2 rabbits and a fat squirrel to show for it. I decide it's enough. She goes back to where she had left Peeta, but he isn't there. In no time, I find the pack, a neat pile of roots beside it. The sheet of plastic has been laid on the ground where the sun can reach the single layer of berries that covers it. But where is he? Katniss calls out to Peeta, and he appears with a bunch of berries that he had collected. But Katniss gets a good look at the berries, and she realizes what they are. My father's voice comes back to me. Not these, Katniss. Never these. They're nightlock. You'll be dead before they reach your stomach.
That's nightlock, Peeta! You'll be dead in a minute!
I didn't know.
You scare me to death. Damn you.
I'm sorry. What are you doing?
Maybe Cato likes berries too.
Just as Katniss is realizing this, a cannon that signifies attributes death fires. The girl from District 5 died from eating the berries, and Katniss realizes that now it is only her, Peeta, and Cato, the boy from District 1, left in the games. She keeps a few of the berries in hopes that maybe they could trick Cato into eating them, and Katniss and Peeta await Cato to ambush them. However, when he finally does, he's being chased by a pack of Muttations.
Have you buried all your children? Tell me so I say.
Guys, I'm so sorry if the angle has changed. My phone died and also deleted a video that I was in the middle of recording. So we're now recording that, and it is 11:57 p.m. way past my bedtime. We're trucking through this because it's finals week, and that's what you do as a college student. And it's almost summer. Muttations are genetically engineered animals that the Capitol, specifically the game makers, create to kill or torture the citizens of the districts and also the tributes in the Hunger Games. Muttations were first used during the rebellion of the districts against the Capitol. Katniss first mentions Muttations in the Hunger Games when she realizes that the pin friend Madge gives her has a mockingjay on it. They're funny birds and something of a slap in the face to the Capitol. During the rebellion, the Capitol bred a series of genetically altered animals as weapons. The common term for them was Muttations, or sometimes mutts for short. One was a special bird called a jabberjay that had the ability to memorize and repeat whole human conversations. Katniss then explains how the jabberjays helped to create mockingjays. The birds were abandoned to die off in the wild, only they didn't die off. Instead, the jabberjays made female mockingbirds, creating a whole new species that could replicate bird whistles and human melodies. Mockingjays continue to play an extremely important role throughout the rest of the books in the trilogy and throughout the rest of this book. Mockingjays are a direct sign of rebellion against the Capitol. Capitol created these animals, but then they left them all to die. But the jabberjays stubbornly refused to die off. Instead, they created a whole new species that the Capitol couldn't control. The next time Muttations appear in the Hunger Games is when the Tracker Jacker's nest is dropped on the careers. Tracker Jackers are killer wasps were spawned in a lab and strategically placed like landmines around the districts during the war. Larger than regular wasps, they have a distinctive solid gold body and a sting that raises a lump the size of a plum on contact. Most people can't tolerate more than a few stings. Some die at once. If you live, the hallucinations brought on by the venom have actually driven people to madness. And then finally, mutations are mentioned when it's only Cato, Peeta, and Katniss left, and Cato's being chased by a pack of mutations. Mutations, no question about it. I've never seen these mutts, but they're no natural-born animals. They resemble huge wolves, but what wolf lands and then balances easily on its hind legs? However, the wolves are even more terrifying when Katniss examines them closely. The mutts are beginning to assemble. As they join together, they raise up again to stand easily on their back legs, giving them an eerily human quality. Each has a thick coat, some with fur that is straight and sleek, others curly, and the colors vary from jet black to what I can only describe as blonde. Slowly, Katniss starts to reel off about the mutts. The green eyes glowering at me are unlike any dog or wolf, any canine I've ever seen. They're unmistakably human. That revelation has barely registered when I notice the collar with the number 1 inlaid with jewels, and the whole horrible thing hits me. The blonde hair, the green eyes, the number, it's Glimmer. The mutts were made to resemble all the deceased tributes, which is absolutely horrific. Both Katniss and Peeta can't help but wonder if maybe the mutts actually have parts of the deceased tributes in them. What did they do to them? You don't think those could be the real eyes? Their eyes are the least of my worries. What about their brains? Have they been given any of the real tribute's memories? Have they been programmed to hate our faces, particularly because we have survived and they were so callously murdered? To think that the game makers may have harvested the dead tribute's bodies to turn them into mutts is horrific, to use that word again. All 3 of these mutations show the callous way that the Capitol treats animals. They have no regard for life. The Museum of Fictional Literary Artifacts has a whole section on the animals of the Hunger Games, entitled Animals of Panem. The section details how important a role animals play in the Hunger Games. Each of these animals have something to say about the story. Some were meant to represent the capital of Panem, others represent the rebels. I think these animals can even have something to say about the classes that Katniss and her family lived in. They also discuss the mutations. The mutts are good examples of the power, manipulation, and wickedness of the capital. The mutts show to have an effect on the tributes while in the Hunger Games arenas. Specifically, the wolves were meant to remind the tributes of their fellow. All 3 of the mutations in the first Hunger Games book play an important role. The Mockingjay was not only on Katniss's pin, but also in the arena. Mockingjay reminds Katniss not only of pin, but also of her home and her father, because Mockingjays are in District 12, and her father had a special relationship with Mockingjays. They also serve as a sign of rebellion. The Tracker Jackers show how easily the Capitol can manipulate and control minds, with the hallucinations that the stings provide driving people mad, and making them question what is real and what is not. This also comes up in the 2 sequels. The wolves serve as a reminder of how little the Capitol cares for the deceased tributes of the games. Once a tribute is dead, their body is lifted out of the arena by a hovercraft. The Capitol then ships the body off to the district the dead tribute was from, so their family can bury them. However, the Capitol could easily use parts of the deceased tributes' bodies for the mutations. It's yet another reminder of how little the Capitol cares with the citizens of the districts. They're willing to use their dead children to scare and torture other district children. Cato is eventually slowly torn apart by the wolf mutts. And Katniss and Peeta have to listen to him slowly die. But the real nightmare is listening to Cato, moaning, begging, and finally just whimpering as the mutts work away at him. After a very short time, I don't care who he is or what he's done. All I want is for his suffering to end. Finally, Katniss decides to put him out of his misery. Pity, not vengeance, sends my arrow flying into his skull. Despite all of the awful things that Cato has done throughout the Hunger Games and in the games, at the end, Katniss feels bad for the suffering that he has endured at the hands of the Capitol. So she takes it into her own hands and she gives him a quick death. It's one more thing of showing how horrible the Capitol is to the citizens of the district, even the citizens from the wealthy districts that the Capitol favors, like Cato. Katniss and Peeta then believe that they have just won the games because of the rule change that had been announced earlier during the games. But then a new announcement is made. Greetings to the final contestants of the 74th Hunger Games. The earlier revision has been revoked. Closer examination of the rulebook has decided that only one winner may be allowed.
The previous revision, allowing for 2 victors from the same district, has been revoked.
And Katniss slowly realizes that the Capitol never was going to let the both of them win and live. This has all been devised by the game makers to guarantee the most dramatic showdown in history, and like a fool, I bought into it. The Capitol had always planned on showing the districts how powerful they were. Katniss, at first, thinks that Peeta is going to attack her. She realizes she can't kill him and he wasn't going to attack her anyways. But the games have to have a victor, something they both reiterate. Yes, they have to have a victor. Without a victor, the whole thing would blow up in the game makers' faces. They'd have failed the Capitol, might possibly even be executed, slowly and painfully while the cameras broadcast it to every screen in the country. If Peeta and I were to both die, or they thought we were,
One of us has to die. They have to have their victor.
No.
Katniss then comes up with the idea to act as if Peeta and her are both going to kill themselves by eating the poison berries that she had saved just in case earlier. I spread out my fingers, and the dark berries glisten in the sun. I give Peeta's hand one last squeeze as a signal, as a goodbye, and we begin counting. 1. Maybe I'm wrong. 2. Maybe they don't care if we both die. 3. It's too late to change my mind. I lift my hand to my mouth, taking one last look at the world. The berries have just passed my lips when the trumpets begin to blare.
Together.
Okay. 1,
2.
3.
Stop!
This moment with the berries is another example of Katniss using the rural world to rebel against the Capitol. Ultimately, both Katniss and Peeta are allowed to win the games because of the berries. If Katniss hadn't had the knowledge that the berries were poisonous, then it's likely that the Capitol would have forced Peeta and Katniss to actually kill each other. But again, Katniss's knowledge of the natural world and the rural is what saves her. To Suleiman again, Katniss doesn't want to survive because society expects her to survive, but because she values her life and the lives of her family and friends. She knew that it would be hard to demand justice from the Capitol, especially since she was of lower class, and they possessed more power than her. The main problem was that she survived based on her own terms, and not the terms placed on her by the Capitol or the game makers. The move with the berries is on Katniss's own terms, and Peeta's own terms. Any other tribute who didn't have the same amount of knowledge on the rural world and natural resources would not realize that the berries were poisonous. Katniss is again using knowledge that the Capitol doesn't want her to have to survive. This moment with the berries is also what spurs on the events of the next 2 books in the trilogy. I hope that I have thoroughly shown how classism, animal theory, and the rural all interconnect in The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. All 3 of these pieces come together to form a bigger puzzle. Collins uses the class structure in the book to show how controlling natural resources can lead to the urbanization of a society, while also showing the impoverization of another part of that society. To quote Suleiman again, "In order to live, natural resources are more important than money, but the districts allowed themselves to be controlled by the Capitol due to fear of the power they had." The classism in The Hunger Games also allows the citizens of the Capitol to view the citizens of the districts as animals, as lesser than them, as non-humans. Burke states this in her article. The games, then, are a metaphor for late-stage capitalism, where everything and everyone is assigned a market price, and some people are viewed as less valuable than others. Through the games, Collins argues that not only have we specialized suffering for entertainment, but that in doing so, we have rendered suffering palatable, made it so easy to ingest that the injustices have become virtually invisible. The people in the Capitol who witness the games year after year have been essentially programmed to view the tributes as non-human, as a way of making the games digestible. As Burke also points out, this is why Katniss enters the arena not as a human being, but as a piece of meat prepared for consumption by those too self-involved to see her as anything other than entertainment. I reused that quote twice because I feel like it's really impactful. Morality of the districts, specifically District 12, also play a huge part in The Hunger Games, with Katniss learning how important the rural environment is, whereas the capital seems to have neglected the rural. Those who have a knowledge on the rural world in the Hunger Games are the ones who ultimately survive, where those who disregard the rural in favor of the urban suffer. To quote Burke one last time, the human sympathy the novel espouses extends to the natural world as well, to the plants and animals with whom we coexist. And this is the second environmental ethic that the novel proposes. We are dependent on the world around us for survival, and if we regain basic food knowledge and respect for the way the environment supports our lives, we can challenge the systems of power regulating our survival. Suzanne Collins is making a clear point in The Hunger Games. Those who take natural resources for granted, who use technology and urbanization for evil, and who look down on others, treating them like animals, will not survive. But those who respect natural resources, who show care and empathy for the rural, treat animals and humans the same, will survive. There are no winners in the Hunger Games, something that is proven in the later sequels in the trilogy and the prequels. But there are survivors, and those are the citizens of the districts, who are treated like animals. Ultimately, this animal treatment is what helps them to survive. I hope you have enjoyed my literary analysis of the classism, the rural, and the animals in The Hunger Games. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry this video was so long and so many things coming together, but I hope you learned something, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. May the odds be ever in your favor. Cue the hanging tree right now.
Are you coming to